journalist and writer Ken Temba, in remembering the first time he met Nat Nakasa, wrote the following. Someone had passed the buck to me. The story went out that a razor-sharp journalist from Durban was coming to Johannesburg to work in our main office. The editor had told someone to find accommodation for him, and that someone had decided that his initiation was best left in my hands. In those days, handing an ordered town boy for me for initiation was subtlest excruciating. Not that we would persecute him. We only sought to divest him of the naiveties and extraneous moralities with which we knew we had been encumbered. He came, I remember, in the morning with a suitcase and a tennis racket. Yea, gods, a tennis racket. We stared at him. The chaps on drum at the time had fancied themselves to be poised on a dramatic, impeccable kind of life. Journalism was still new to most of us, and we saw it in the light of the heroics of Henry Nxumalo, decidedly not in the light of tennis, which we classed with drafts. He had a puckish, boyish face and a name something like Nathaniel Nakasa. We soon made it Nat. I took him to Sophiatown and showed him the room where he would stay. What was it? 3 minutes? 5 minutes? Then I took him to my shebeen in Edith Street. There was a beautiful girl there, and I hoped Nat would make her. As a matter of cold fact, as he declined drink after drink, I decided that he was interested. She was Tswana and he Zulu, but they got on swimmingly. Love being polyglot. Honestly, I don't know how it happened, but I left him there. He told me later that a few Tsotsis came in and he approached them with trepidated terror. He asked them if they knew where Ken Temba lived, and they immediately looked hostile. At first, they thought he contemplated some harm to the revered Ken Temba, but when Mpo, the girl, explained that he was really a friend to the chap who had deserted him there in one of his drunken impulses, they said, "Okay, Durban boy, hang around and we'll take you there." This is a measure of Nat's character. He was in a new situation. He knew about Joburg Tsotsis, the country's worst. He was scared. He told me later he was, but he went with them, chatted with them, wanted to know what type of character this, his host, was. Though he only got grunts, it was the journalist in action, not the terrified fish out of water. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is why we have gathered in this room tonight, to honor those who have abandoned their fear and have chased the truth. My name is Duduzile Ramela, and I will be your host for this evening. And just for a few housekeeping issues, the restrooms are to the door that you use to enter the hall, up the stairs, or you can go to the 19th floor. Starters will also be served at this point, and please note that the waiters and waitresses will also come around to take your order for mains. With that, welcome to the 2023 Nat Nakasa Awards for Courageous Journalism. In our midst today, we're joined by representatives from the Nat Nakasa family, namely Tami Nakasa, the nephew to Nat Nakasa. We acknowledge Mom Gladys Nakasa in spirit as she could not be with us tonight. We have the pleasure of being joined as well by Justice Zukisa Chiqi, our generous sponsors from Sanlam, represented by Kafar Hassan, Group Executive of Corporate Affairs at Sanlam Alliance, Mr. Alim Milazi, as well as the rest of the Sanlam delegation. The leadership of the South African National Editors Forum under the stewardship of Sbusiso Ngalwa. The 2022 winners are with us tonight, and to your left, or rather to my left, we've also got a Hall of Fame that you can engage with. So these are the winners of the previous years as we are in the 8th year of the awards. So please do engage. Without further ado, please help me welcome SANEF Chairperson Sbungalwa to the stage.
Ladies and gentlemen, let me first acknowledge the members of the Nakasa family who are here, Ubutami, who always makes sure to grace us with his presence. Acknowledge also our sponsors and our friends at Sanlam. Thank you for your continued support and your generosity. And to our guest speaker, Justice Zukisa Chiqi, thank you for accepting our invite and for agreeing to speak here tonight. Colleagues, today is a very special day, it being the 25th installment of these awards. And I note that actually these awards are 25, celebrating 25 years of hosting these awards, a year after SANEF celebrated its 25th anniversary. I think to me that just underlines SANEF's long commitment to journalism excellence and media freedom in South Africa. And you know that we have a number of awards in this country, but I don't think there are any awards that are quite like this one, because these are awards for courageous journalism. And we know that courage and bravery are not traits that are easy to come by. It takes a lot to be courageous, sometimes at the risk of danger and threats to one's life. And we know that to be courageous for us as journalists and for some of our colleagues comes with a lot of stress. And sometimes some of our colleagues are sent into depression. I'm not lying when I tell you that I know of colleagues who have to wake up and wear bulletproof vests. I know newsrooms keep riot gear, bulletproof vests, riot hats, what they call those hard hats, because of how dangerous sometimes it can be to be a journalist. So, ladies and gentlemen, we owe a lot as a country to courageous journalists who are undeterred by threats, misinformation, and abuse in their pursuit of the truth. You will recall last year in February when the Chief Justice was interviewed by the JSC, and he said the following about courageous journalists. And I quote, "The work of the inquiry I chair would have been much more difficult had it not been for investigative journalists and whistleblowers. We are indebted to them. As a country, we should do whatever we can to provide protection to them." So, ladies and gentlemen, courageous journalists deserve praise and recognition, and that is exactly what we are doing here tonight. Recognizing these men and women who do this important work, which is rather taxing and also thankless. All of this in support of our democracy. And like Nat Nakasa, who cocked a snook at the apartheid regime and used his pen to expose the injustices of apartheid, our courageous journalists continue to pursue the truth and justice at all costs. These awards are a reminder of the sacrifices that were made by the generation of Nat. It is a generation that took the mickey out of the apartheid state and its ridiculous laws. It is a generation that braved harassment, arrests, detention without trial, and censorship. Yet, they did not stop writing. And we also know that is a generation that wrote glowingly about their drinking pursuits. You heard Duduya reciting Ken's various trips to the Shebins. If you've read The Will to Die, you will know of some of those stories, actually, the hilarity at how he recounts some of his encounters with the police. But colleagues, we know that that was not about them having fun. It was actually a coping mechanism during a very difficult period in our history. It's a generation that suffered a lot, but today we're not facing apartheid. Yet today journalists are being harassed and abused. Online, actually, and especially our women colleagues who bear the brand of misogyny and appalling sexist behavior at the hands of trolls and sometimes nameless bots. That is why at every given opportunity, colleagues, I remind you to seek mental health support via the South African Depression and Anxiety Group. SANEF has a partnership with SADC, and they have tailored a program to assist journalists who need mental health support. Basically, you don't have to suffer alone, as Nat did during his last days. Courage does not mean to suppress one's pain. It does not mean you must laugh at your pain and pretend as though we are macho and we're strong, yet we know that we're suffering inside. Let us seek help, let us be kind to each other, and let's check up on each other. Colleagues, you will know that as we gather tonight, it's a sad time for us as the media fraternity, as we're mourning the loss of our colleague Mkuseli Sizani, who worked for the Daily Dispatch. We go through a lot as journalists, but we tend to suffer in silence. In fact, we laugh off and make light of our traumatic experiences. That is why it's important for me, as we celebrate courageous journalism, to make a distinction between courage and actually needing help. And that is why I reiterate the need for us to support each other, and those who have that e-card of SEDEC, please let's share it generously with some of our colleagues. You know, this time around last year, actually, we were in Durban. I missed the awards, but earlier I had been to the Heroes Acre in Chesterville, which is where Nat lies buried. And the reason we were there, it was actually to unveil the restored tombstone of Nat Nakasa. It's a tombstone that had been vandalized along with other graves, desecrated graves, including that of the former Bafana captain, Senzo Meiwa. And when I reflected on that moment, I actually realized that what was happening in that cemetery and other cemeteries is actually a microcosm of what's happening in our country. There's just no respect, not even for the dead. There's no respect for the rule of law. There are areas where there's complete anarchy. But be that as it may, we are South Africans and we live in the hope that our country will overcome its challenges. We may be broken as a country, but we're not without hope. And that is also why we need courageous journalists to continue to pursue the truth and shine the light on injustices and corruption. And ladies and gentlemen, may we never go back to the days where the media and the judiciary stood as the bulwark in defense of our democracy as our country was being sold to the Guptas for 30 pieces of silver. That is why we need strong institutions of state. And that is also why we need all arms of the state pulling together, independent of each other, of course, for the promotion and protection of our democracy. And as the media in South Africa, let us continue to promote our democracy and to defend our constitution. And before I sit down, let me thank the office that has put together this great work, and also our judges who worked tirelessly. And if you're looking at them tonight, you wouldn't actually imagine that they've actually gone through nights and having to pull hair, trying to figure out who the winners are. Thank you very much for all your work. But before I sit down, colleagues, can I ask that we observe a moment of silence for our colleague Mkuseli Sizani. May his soul rest in peace. Thank you all for listening, and welcome to the 25th edition of the Nat Nakasa Awards for Courageous Journalism.
Spoo correctly characterizes what it means to be a journalist when he speaks about it needing courage and bravery, which is not easy to come by. It does come with some stress and depression. And this too inflicted Nat Nakasa, because he once noted about trying to contemplate whether to leave the country or not. And this is what he said more so about his work. And I read, "In trying to avoid bitterness" is the name of the story or the article. He says, "If I should leave this country and decide not to come back, it'll be because of a desire to avoid perishing in my own bitterness, a bitterness born of being reduced to a second-class citizen. Now, I do not wish to despise or hate anyone, for in my business, the writing business, nothing could be more disastrous. I could not write freely about anyone if I allowed bitterness to run away with my head, for I want to write about people, not enemies." And this is the man that we speak about, who contended with a number of themes in the 1950s, reflecting on not only what was happening in South Africa, but how it impacted his life and the way he showed up as a journalist, as many journalists go through that as well in 2023. With that, hopefully we can get a little bit more into the life of Nat Nakasa and understand him more intimately as we call to the stage the nephew of Nat Nakasa, Mr. Tami Nakasa. A round of applause, everybody.
I would like to express our gratitude for SANEF for having made sure that my uncle Net's legacy has been kept alive all these years. This is a journey that has been traversed for so many years. And Mom Gladys, who couldn't be here tonight, has been a part of this occasion all the time. And unfortunately, due to her age, she couldn't make it tonight. So I would ask for you tonight to just beg your indulgence for me to just sort of reminisce the journey that Nat actually traveled. When Nat interviewed the Afrikaner painter, who was also a National Party supporter in 1964, his piece subsequently in the Rain Daily Mail newspaper under the title Afrikaner Youth Gets a Raw Deal. Today, I want to say that also journalists today get a raw deal, or they get away with it. One of the hallmarks of Net's journalistic career is that it was characterized by a humorously satiric angle of reporting that disarmed its most hardened detractors, and even those who protested his tendency to socialize across the color lines, and some who branded him a black liberal, and others still a black coconut. But all these labels are far from the truth that allows journalists to take home a lot more than some of us. Take, for instance, Ken Temba's House of Truth in Sophia Town. A lay person may be forgiven to have thought the saints lived in that house and the truth dwelt there. Sometimes journalists have a monopoly, not ownership, on truth reporting. With Nate's style, the reins of the truth sometimes slightly unhinged as he, in his own words, and I quote, slowly go around the bend of reporting a story, close quote. Consider, for example, his covering of the Investigate drum story entitled, Do Whites Hate Blacks? The photo on the story shows Nat, the diminutive journalist, sitting in Dr. Bayer's office interviewing him on the subject. An ordinary person would probably not have gotten access to a hard man like Dr. Bayer's. But Nat, the journalist, was able to get away with it. In a sense, Nat was a journalist in a sense, Nat was, in the words of the drum editor Stan Mujuwadi, a truly and remarkable decaffeinated journalist. Decaffeinated journalists truly got away with it, as they got away from journalistic capture today. Actually, the punchline of Nat's journalism lay in his unrestrainable celebration of humans, be they black, white, brown, or any color for that matter. He was not deterred by human color or by obsession of a particular race with his skin, history, or achievements. but he worked hard to see through all the masks and the obfuscated person-to-person and human-to-human interactive connectivity in today's parlance. Nat spoke on the television in South Africa in the 60s, long before it came. He also appeared on television in the US in 1964, just to demonstrate that he was, in many ways, longing to be fully human. There were, however, films like King Kong and Come Back Africa that were shot in South Africa in the 50s, and even before that, and they premiered some of our important social figures. Nevertheless, Nat was friend to all, and I believe an enemy to none. His humor pushed back most of his critics and detractors while bringing more closer to him all those who loved and cherished being human. Nadine Godmer, in the preface to the book, The World of Nat Nakasa by Aesop Patel, remarked that Nat was able to see an upside-down situation in an upside-down way. This was an amazing feat for someone who was in early stages of his remarkable journalistic career. Nat dissociated his journalism from bitterness because, as a reporter, he didn't want the object of his reporting to be colored by the lenses of his personal moods. Another outstanding attribute of Nat was that he feared God. As a young man in Chesterville in Durban, he was brought up in the revival movement of the late evangelist Nicholas Bingu of the Back to God crusade. Even the great liberal fighters in Africa somehow were connected with the Church of God. He was also at some point in his youthful days mentored by AWG champion Umahlati Amnyama, the former trade unionist and ANC leader, until he went on his way. Nat was a neighbor of champion and vice versa. He was able to strike friendship with any amiable person at first encounter. He struck friendship with the late Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi when he met him at Emahlabathini for a drum journalistic piece. Prince Buthelezi was the one who instructed his driver to take Nat to the Durban airport when he departed that city for the last time in 1964. He also struck friendship at first encounter with Chief Albert Luthuli in Crowdville when he met the latter for a journalistic piece. We must not forget that Nat got his journalism DNA from his father, my grandfather, Chamberlain, Joseph Nakasa, the author of Ivangeli Lokuzaka Nokuzenzela, and a regular contributor to the Ilanga Lasenatal newspaper. It is remarkable that CJ was a strict disciplinarian of the missionary type towards his children. His children could not allow themselves to behave drunkenly in front of him. No matter how inebriated they may be, the siblings had to put a hard effort in concealing it. But somehow, when it came to Nat, the journalist, the rules were relaxed. When all others addressed their father reverently as Ubaba, Nat was allowed to call his father Dad, while his shoes with his feet inside were perched on the table. Nat was indeed allowed to get away with it. Just as journalists are allowed today to get away from inaccurate reporting by citing erratum. I thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much for letting us into the life of Nat Nakasa, sounding like somebody who was very much loved and favored by his father, just as he is loved and favored, I guess, tonight as we not only honor those who have done courageous work in 2023 and in the previous years, but in his generation as well. A remarkable decaffeinated journalist. That is quite the expression. Let's take a look now at journalism, I guess, in 2023. It's facing its toughest challenge yet. From the proliferation of citizen journalism bolstered by social media platforms to the dwindling support of print publications, which is something that we're all aware of, the environment is taxing. While these challenges offer opportunities, it also means that the industry needs support as resources and professionals take strain. Tonight, we also take time to appreciate our relationship with our generous sponsors, Sanlam, who have plugged the gap and continue to support the work of journalists for the 8th year running this year. Sanlam has generously sponsored the Nat Nakasa Awards for Courageous Journalism, and because of you, we can. With that, ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Mr. Gafar Hassam, Group Executive of Corporate Affairs at Sanlam Alliance.
Good evening, ladies, distinguished guests, members of the media, colleagues, and gentlemen. I am honored to have the opportunity to deliver remarks on the 25th anniversary of the Nat Nakasa Award under the auspices of the South African National Editors Forum, SANEF. Allow me to start by saying a warm thank you to the Nat Nakasa family for allowing us all to learn from the wisdom of Nat Nakasa. His contribution to the South African journalism is an inspiration to journalists across the African continent. I would also like to acknowledge tonight's keynote speaker, the Justice Tsiki. I am sure you agree with me that we look forward to listening to the insights that she will share in her speech. I also wish to acknowledge the leadership and membership of SANEF for keeping the light on the legacy and contribution of Nat Nakasa to the South African journalism. I want to pay a tribute to Nat. As many of you know, tonight's award celebrates the life and the work of Nat Nakasa, who is part of an inspirational generation of South African journalists who courageously exposed injustice in the apartheid era. Doing so through his writing for Drum magazine and other publications, the apartheid regime banished him for his critical writings that exposed the regime of wrongness. His sense of justice was so strong that in his pursuit of truth, he chose exile from his native land, traveled to New York in a Nieman fellowship without a passport, just an exit permit. An exit permit from his country of birth meant he was banished and unable to return home. He was a young man, only 27 years old. Sadly, he died in New York a year later. Today's occasion is more than a celebration of Nat's legacy. It is a reminder that the pursuit of truth, no matter what your profession or circumstance, requires resolute courage and dedication. The role of SANEF and the Nat Nakasa Award in recognizing courageous journalists. Of course, the Nat Nakasa Award is just one aspect of SANEF's work. SANEF conducts other important work, including lobbying and speaking out on transgressions against journalists who are simply doing their job, especially in the turbulent times that we are witnessing. Steadfast reporting and journalism in the face of the attacks the media have been facing bring into sharp focus the need for prizes such as the Nat Nakasa Award and the importance of the organizations like SANEF in safeguarding hard-earned media freedoms and highlighting the plight of all journalists across the African continent. The Sanlam support for journalism, for our part, as part of a Pan-Africa Financial Services Organization, Sanlam appreciates the journalism landscape on the continent through both our business activities and the proactive engagement with the Africa financial journalists. Allow me to put this into a bit of context. On the business front, just 2 weeks ago, we announced regulatory approvals for Sanlam and Alliance's joint venture, which paves way for a significant leading Pan-African non-financial services company with a presence in 27 African countries. The joint venture, which was signed last year, will operate as Sanlam Alliance. We are confident that this powerful partnership will create significant value for clients, shareholders, and other stakeholders. It will enable Sanlam to provide innovative insurance services to meet the ever-evolving needs of our clients on the continent. In the week of the announcement, the Sanlam Alliance leadership, myself included, had extensive interviews and engagements with African financial journalists to share the potential economic benefit of this milestone for the African continent. The transaction is reflection of our dedication to our mission, which includes to lead in all the main segments in South Africa. In other regions of Africa as well as India, the goal is the same. International diversification remains a primary focus in partnership with our colleagues at Santam. We also believe that the transaction presents opportunities to broaden financial inclusion across the continent by affording customers access to insurance and other financial services. The Sanlam Journalism Initiative. Journalists like yourselves tonight have a role to play in educating Africa's population about the importance and the appropriate financial services. At Sanlam, one area we believe that we can provide support pertains to the further development of financial journalism and training of business journalists. In this regard, Sanlam has supported journalists from community media and mainstream for more than 45 years through training programs and awards. These include, to just mention a few, the Sanlam Group Awards for Excellence in Financial Journalism. This program has played an international role in recognizing the best journalists and journalism from across the continent since 1974. It will celebrate its 50 years anniversary in 2025. The Sanlam Summer School for Financial Journalists. Every year, the summer school runs once a week training program for 25 journalists from all over Africa to upskill delegates with financial news reporting capabilities. This year, the program celebrated its 20th anniversary. Financial Journalism module at the Stellenbosch University of Journalism. This is a course that impacts financial analysts and journalist skills to students seeking to pursue careers in journalism and media sector. We acknowledge more can be done to support journalism, especially through collaboration. Support from SANEF and the business sector can only make a valuable contribution and enable many journalists to continue to write robustly with their pens and their hearts and unearth the truth. In concluding, ladies and gentlemen, the world is in transition, and we all continue to adapt to a myriad of global developments. Amidst the challenging global environment, robust journalism is vital and matters because an unfiltered press covers the truth. There are many issues, often extremely complicated ones, that journalists are trained to analyze and explain. Without newspapers, radio shows, blogs, and so forth, the average person would have little to no knowledge of what is going on around them. Most people lack the time and resources to investigate issues and stories that affect them in their communities. This is where journalists come in. Armed with skills like research and critical thinking, the best journalists know what questions to ask, what leads to pursue, and how to fast check. Fact check is a vital element of the free press. In the press, if the press is not able to fact check safely and effectively, the truth remains blurred. At Sanlam, we remain committed to making significant contribution to the future sustainability of Africa. This includes our proud track record of supporting financial journalism through our initiatives that I have mentioned, like the Sanlam Group Awards for Financial Journalism and the Summer School. We are confident about the future and will continue investing in our business, our employees, clients, as well as supporting robust journalism on the African continent. On behalf of Sanlam, I wish to congratulate in advance the recipients of the awards tonight, as well as all those who have been nominated. Lastly, I would like to leave you with a forceful thought in the spirit of the World Press Freedom Day, which is observed annually. As many of you know, the day celebrates fundamental principles of press freedom, evaluating press freedom globally, defending the media from attacks on their independence, and so forth. The words of wisdom are by the South African philosopher and social critic Mokokoma. They underscore the importance of civil debate and tolerance amidst the polarized global economy affecting the world's stability and prosperity. I quote, "Freedom of speech gives us the right to offend others, whereas freedom of thought gives them the choice as to whether or not they may be offended." Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you. May you have a good evening.
Indeed, the works of the likes of Nat Nakasa, Ken Temba, Henry Nxumalo reverberated not only just in South Africa, but throughout the continent, from West to East Africa. The 1950s were also characterized the time of their journalism and writing as a literary renaissance in South Africa, which greatly influenced writers from the rest of the continent. Mr. Kafar, indeed, fact-checking is a vital element of a free press, which speaks to what Mr. Tami Nakasa was talking about when he spoke about accountability and responsibility of journalists. The 1950s in Sapphire Town was also characterized by a lot of culture. It was characterized by a lot of music. It was not just characterized by Shebeen Queens, but a lot of dancing. You would have noted on Drum Magazine and all those years ago, till today, you'll find t-shirts of Drum Magazine with the likes of Miriam Makeba with that also wonderful dress that she wore because of the music at the time, which also spoke about the days of the time. With that, let's welcome back our musical band, Luanda Gogwana Trio, who will take us back to the 1950s. Mr. Tami Nakasa spoke about Nat Nakasa's humor. He spoke about his style of writing, and his humor is also reflected in his work. Mr. Gafar spoke about Nat Nakasa pursuing justice, or being somebody that pursued justice, in a piece titled Crossline. This is an interaction that he shares, and I'm sure by the end of the evening you'll have conversations with some journalists who'll tell you some of the background stories that not many get to hear about how they get the story. And I truly believe that this is just but one piece that speaks about how Nat contended with the concept of justice and how he went about it in a humorous way. And so this is how the interaction goes. It happened in Durban. I telephoned a booking office for a train ticket to Johannesburg. Could you please reserve a seat for me on the Wednesday night train to Johannesburg? I asked. The booking clerk replied, certainly, sir. Will you hold the line a minute? Nat replies, yes. The booking agent, after a while, says, are you there, sir? I'm afraid the Wednesday train is fully booked. Nat replies, what about Thursday morning? The booking agent then says, I'll go and see, sir. Will you hold on again? Nat says, yes. The booking agent comes back, are you there, sir? Yes, I can put you on the Thursday morning train. What is the name, sir? Nat replies, Nathaniel Nakasa. The booking agent asks, did you say MacArthur, sir? Could you spell it, please? Nat replies, Nakasa, Nakasa. What nationality would that be, asked the booking agent. Nat replies, African. The booking agent says, darn it, why the hell didn't you tell me in the beginning that you're a native? Nat replies, I'm sorry, sir, I didn't. The booking agent angrily, shut up, jy lieg. And this is just but one story where you want to understand what he was going through or what he was trying to do. You take from that, I guess, what you will, with his contention or his wanting to delve into the issue of justice, but doing it in a humorous way and in a real way. With that, ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Justice Zukisa Chikli. She's currently a judge at the Constitutional Court of South Africa. She was elevated to the court as a permanent judge in 2019. Justice Chikli acted as a judge in various courts such as the Labour Court, the High Court and the Competition Appeal Court before being appointed as a High Court judge in 2005. She was elevated to the Supreme Court of Appeal in 2009 and served in that capacity for 10 years. Justice Chikli is passionate about human rights issues, equality and empowerment. She aligns herself with institutions such as the Black Lawyers Association, Legal Education Center, South African chapter of International Association of Women Judges, South African Judicial Education Institute, and African Regional Judges Forum as a means of ensuring that the constitutional rights of all citizens are not violated. Ladies and gentlemen, please warmly welcome Justice Zukisa Chikli.
Thank you for affording me the opportunity to share some thoughts with you this evening. I will cover broadly the role of the media and the judiciary in our democracy. I will also talk about the relationship between the judiciary and the media and how both, in their respective ways, have contributed to our democracy. Section 16(1)(a) of the Constitution states that everyone has the right to freedom of expression, which includes the freedom of the press and other media. This right is paramount to our democracy and the free flow of ideas. In print media, South Africa and another, versus Minister of Home Affairs and another, a case which concerned the constitutionality of restricting media depictions of sexual conduct in the Films and Publications Amendment Act. The Constitutional Court provided a powerful recitation of how the right to freedom of expression underpins our society. Justice Sikweyiya, speaking for the court, emphasized that, I quote, "Embraced by the right is the liberty to express and to receive information or ideas freely. The right also encompasses the freedom to form one's own opinion about expression received, and in this way both promotes and protects the moral agency of individuals." I close quote. This right to free expression is even more critical when viewed against the backdrop of our country and its past. As stated by the Constitutional Court in S versus Mamabulo, throughout the dark history of apartheid, our people were subjected to thought control, censorship, and enforced conformity to governmental theories. Therefore, as the court acknowledged, freedom of speech, the free and open exchange of ideas, is all the more important to us in this country. The sentiments in Mamabulo were expressed some 22 years ago. But freedom of expression and the free dissemination of information is no less important today. The role of the media in any society is to investigate and share information and ideas, in particular on matters of public interest, so that the public is informed and able to play its part in political, economic, and cultural life. The relationship between the media and the preservation of our democracy was explicitly recognized by the Constitutional Court in Khumalo and others versus Olomisa, when it held that, I quote, "The mass media play a role of undeniable importance. They bear an obligation to provide citizens both with information and with a platform for the exchange of ideas, which is crucial to the development of a democratic culture. As primary agents of the dissemination of information and ideas, they are inevitably extremely powerful institutions in a democracy, and they have a constitutional duty to act with vigor, courage, integrity, and responsibility. The Constitutional Court, therefore, ladies and gentlemen, has recognized that the work done by journalists is very crucial in our democracy. This is not surprising because journalists contribute in ensuring that there is transparency and accountability in the exercise of public and private power. Most South Africans do not have the time nor the resources to investigate matters that affect them. Justice Sikweyiya in Print Media South Africa stated, I quote from this judgment again, one might even consider the press to be a public sentinel. The sentiments expressed by the late Justice of the Constitutional Court are apt. They are indeed so precise because if we were to live in a world where exposure of the truth was censored, various abuses of power such as corruption and violations of human rights would thrive unabated. However, as we all know, all rights and freedoms have responsibilities. Journalists and media houses must be conscious of the imperative that reporting and coverage has to be done with justifiable bounds, has to be responsible and fair. There is also the responsibility to ensure that whatever information is shared with the public is verified and therefore accurate. You all know, ladies and gentlemen, that misinformation can be very harmful. What then is the role of the judiciary in our democracy? The judiciary is regarded as the guardian of the rule of law and democracy. It plays an important role in safeguarding the Constitution and its values. It also protects the rights of people and ensures the realization of a better life for all. The Constitution requires the judiciary to function independently and impartially when interpreting and applying the law in the adjudication of disputes, without interfering with the functions and powers of the other branches of the state. The judiciary is tasked with ensuring that there is no abuse of state power by those who make laws and those who set policies that govern the country. Our courts are therefore vested with significant powers by the Constitution, and as such, the judiciary is expected to act with credibility and integrity in order to preserve its legitimacy. So what then is the nature of the relationship between the judiciary and the media? Former Chief Justice Sandile Ngcobo described the relationship between the media and the judiciary as follows, I quote, "The media and the judiciary are the two pillars supporting South Africa's constitutional democracy, inextricably connected institutions that, without each other, would be unable to perform their crucial democratic function," close quote. The relationship between the media and the judiciary is animated by the principle of open justice. This is the bond that links the two institutions. Open justice is the principle that the doors of all the courts in the nation must be open to the public and the press. This concept has been around for centuries. It is deeply rooted in African tradition. In African societies, as you know, justice was administered in the open. Trials were conducted under a tree. A courtroom had no walls, only a roof of leaves and branches to provide shade from the sun and shelter from the elements. Significantly, the Constitutional Court logo depicts people sheltering under a canopy of branches. This is a representation of the Constitution's protective role. The very important feature that the judiciary and the media have in common is that they both pose a serious threat to kleptocracy. They both keep our government and those in powerful and strategic positions in check and demand accountability. We know that we have three branches of government, but in an article published by the Southern Africa Litigation Center on 13 April 2022, a sentiment was expressed that the media's role is so critical to our democracy that it can be viewed as the fourth state or the fourth estate. In essence, this fourth estate is one that keeps the public informed about what the three branches of government are doing. The Constitution empowers the judiciary to make pronouncements on and to review the decisions of Parliament and the executive and holders of public office. This constitutional competence necessitates that the courts and judicial officers should be true to their oath of office, to administer justice to all persons alike without fear, favor, or prejudice, in accordance with the Constitution and the law. This therefore means that as judges, we are obliged to perform our duties free from influence or control by other actors, either in the public or private sector. The effectiveness of the law and the respect that people have for the law and the government which creates it is dependent upon the judiciary's independence and its ability to produce just decisions. You will recall, ladies and gentlemen, how we were vilified in the not so distant period of the July unrest. I know that what kept most of us going was our oath of office. Some of us were threatened, some lived in fear that their families would be harmed, but we soldiered on. The media was also not spared. It is still not free from unjustified criticism and attacks. We know how some journalists and media houses have had to approach the courts in order to protect their rights and in order to perform their functions effectively. The role of the media is well known. I need to emphasize this. It is the eyes, ears, and voice of the public. It has an important duty to produce content that is aimed at, amongst other things, informing and educating the public. It must do so without fear of arrest or other forms of interference. Of course, some of the exposés instill fear and anger, but it is no justification to stifle the media from performing its functions. The concept of access to justice is also dependent on the media. It was the investigative capability of journalists that led to the decision to establish the State Capture Commission. It was the media that ensured that the public was kept abreast of the developments in the State Capture Commission and the challenges the chair of that commission sometimes had to grapple with. In fact, the South African public found themselves active participants in the commission in the comfort of their own homes. They could critique and start their own conversations about issues arising there as if they were part of the commission, thanks to the consistent and fair reporting by the media. The decision to broadcast the Oscar Pistorius trial in 2014 changed the landscape of how the media reports on court proceedings. The trial was broadcast live after media agencies applied to the court for the comprehensive access to the courtroom. This followed a careful and deliberate court ruling about the constitutional principles of human dignity, freedom, and equality. What I have discovered from my interaction with members of communities is that people are now more informed about court processes, court languages, and court decorum. Recently, it is the media that laid bare the alleged administrative and institutional problems associated with the alleged escape of Mr. Thabo Bester. It is the media that informed the public how public resources were allegedly used to bring Mr. Bester and Dr. Nandi Phamagudumana back to the country. The point, ladies and gentlemen, is that the member of the executive responsible for that decision had to account to the public and give the public his reasons and thinking behind the decision. Of course, the public is still glued to their television sets and listen to radio and read newspapers in order to keep themselves informed of what is going on in that matter. Social media is also an active an active participant during court hearings. And through this medium, the people are able to express their opinions. You know how some in the social media platforms refer to themselves as, I quote, Madam Speaker, close quote, arising from your broadcasts on the processes of Parliament. How many of our retired family members are already speculating with strong opinions what will happen to the accused in the Senzo Meyiwa trial? And how they do not miss a day without following the trial. This, for me, represents access to justice, and you are the instruments. The media's role in the appointment of judges cannot be understated. The live proceedings and the print media publishing have ignited public interest. South Africans have expressed interest by watching candidates interviewed by the Judicial Services Commission and share their opinions on social media platforms. The importance of transparency is paramount, and it is an overarching principle in the selection and appointment process. Transparency is a cross-cutting principle that is necessary for enhancing the integrity of, as well as public confidence in, the process. I accept that generally, there is still a challenge in the public's understanding of the role and functioning of the judiciary and legal system as a whole. But I have to acknowledge the role of the media in making sure that the public is educated and informed. The dignity, integrity, and independence of the judiciary must be strongly guarded for its proper functioning. This protection is further strengthened when the media ensures that the legal content they convey to the public is fact-based, fair, and accurate. I am happy that the South African media is very conscious of these obligations and conveys information in a fair and accurate manner. We're also conscious of our role in entrenching media freedom and freedom of expression. As we do that as the judiciary, we do not forget how you as journalists work under extremely difficult circumstances. We know how you place your lives in danger in order to cover volatile situations such as unrest. When the unfortunate explosions occurred in downtown Johannesburg, we learned about this scary incident from your reporters. We know that some of you have been victims of crime by having your properties stolen whilst you were busy trying to ensure that there is effective coverage of certain situations. I salute all of you. I respect you. I also wish to take the opportunity to reflect on at least 3 of this country's icons who probably inspired a lot of young journalists. There are very many of these champions. For the purpose of tonight's presentation, please allow me to only mention Messiahs Nat Nakasa, Ken Temba, and Percy Qoboza. Their stories and how they have inspired you is embedded in your respective minds. It is saddening that Mr. Nakasa left this country with an exit permit, and that at the time he left this country of birth, he knew that he had no legal document permitting him to come back to his country of birth. Yes, democracy came a bit late for him. The constitution was not in place at the time. I think that our courts post-democracy would never have allowed such an injustice to be perpetuated. Mr. Nakasa wrote that the only way that he could get on with the business of living without getting too depressed was seeing institutionalized racism as an experiment. However, despite his sense of humor, despair was never far from his mind. We know how he met his death at a very tender age, away from his family and loved ones. Mr. Ken Temba was also part of a generation of Black writers that transformed journalism and the South African literally landscape in the 1950s and 60s. This was a volatile period in South Africa, both culturally and politically. Artists, intellectuals, and the growing cohort of Black journalists were at the forefront of finding platforms to speak against socio-political ills during that period. Mr. Ken Temba was a journalist and short story writer who challenged the apartheid state by foregrounding the pain and the joy of Black life. I'm happy that the universe made it possible for me to meet and get to know his two daughters, Yvonne and Murungwa. The story of Mr. Percy Qoboza's life remains an example of fearless reporting in the face of persecution. He stood by the principle that he and other fellow journalists would be committed to telling the story as it was without fear or favor. His reluctance to keep quiet and not challenge government repression meant that he faced harassment throughout his life. Yet he remained a stalwart in his contribution for press freedom and the greater South African population. He believed that the purpose of a newspaper editor was to show, out of necessity, that their newspaper was a mirror of their community. Mr. Qoboza is remembered for his consistent pursuit of these promotions, of the promotion of these freedoms. He did this during a period in South African history that was characterized by political oppression and the severe curtailing of freedom of speech of individuals, as well as the press in general. Messiahs Nat Nakasa, Ken Temba, and Percy Qoboza are immortalized for the timeless values that they embraced. They can continue to be symbols of the fight for press freedom, journalistic excellence, and equality in the society. In conclusion, I end by reminding you of what Mr. Nat Nakasa wrote in his collection of writings, A Native of Nowhere, referring to the way apartheid shut their voices down as Black journalists at the time. I quote, "I may shut up for some time because of fear, yet even this will not make me feel ashamed. For I know that as long as the ideas remain unchanged within me, there will always be the possibility that one day I shall burst out and say everything that I wish to say in a loud and thunderous voice," I close quote. I challenge the recipients of the awards to be conferred today to burst out and say everything that needs to be said in their own loud and thunderous voices, and uphold the right to freedom of expression, equality, and human dignity as enshrined in the Constitution. Thank you.
Another round of applause, ladies and gentlemen, for Justice Zukisa Chikwi. Thank you very much, Justice, for your honest reflections on the media landscape, not only in 2023, but in the days of old, and walking us down memory lane. Indeed, independent media, or an independent media, an independent judiciary are paramount to a healthy democracy. And when we speak of the media being a fourth estate in democracy, it does indeed come with great responsibility, all that much power. With that, ladies and gentlemen, it's time to get our bellies warm. Dinner is served.
you very much, Tutuzile. I appreciate this. My task tonight is a very easy one. It's to thank each and every one of you for gathering here this evening for this very special event, one where we take a moment and pause and reflect on courageous and brave journalism. But also, when we honor Nat Nakasa and honor his bravery and courage in journalism, we cannot not speak about mental health, as the chair of SANEF spoke about. By honoring Nat Nakasa, we have to acknowledge the difficulty that this job brings and its impact on the mental health of the practitioners of journalism. So, ladies and gentlemen, I just want to say that I am proud of this organization, SANEF, not only honoring Nat Nakasa, but honoring his legacy and fighting for a better industry and a better society for young journalists, so that we're able to see brave and courageous journalism on display like we have tonight. Firstly, a special thanks to the Justice for honoring our invite. Thank you very much. We appreciate your words in acknowledging the role of the media and the judiciary side by side, playing an important role in pushing back against attempts to subvert democracy and turn this country into a kleptocracy. We appreciate your words, Justice, and we appreciate your support. To the judges of the award, the inimitable team led by Crystal, Joe, Peter, and Moiponi, thank you very much. Your work, your dedication in adjudicating these awards are not taken for granted. To Sanlam, Mr. Gafar Hassam, I think somebody joked and said Sanlam is our blessers tonight. So thank you very much for your contribution in supporting journalism and for putting your money where your mouths are, in the sense of supporting not only these awards, but other very substantial interventions in journalism in South Africa and across the African continent. So thank you very much. Representing the Nat Nakasa family, Tami Nakasa, thank you, and thank you to your family for walking this journey with us as SANEF. And finally, this would not have been a successful event without the staff members of SANEF, the wonderful Reggie, Hopewell, and Zudzi. We appreciate you. We appreciate all of your efforts in putting this wonderful evening together. Ladies and gentlemen, before we close for the evening, I would like to prompt senior journalists and editors who are sitting in this room. I can name and shame you guys, but I won't. But I would like to prompt you to please join our organization. This is our organization. There are membership forms at the entrance. Zuzi is here to help you. Glenda Daniels, our convener in Gauteng, is here to assist. Please join. Please pay up your membership fees. This organization will only survive and live as long as we want it to and as long as we participate actively. So as much as we advocate for support from Sanlam and other big businesses, we also need to support our organization. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful evening. Goodbye.
Thank you very much, Konita. Time is precious, and you could have been anywhere in the world tonight, but you chose to be with us in this room, and for that we say thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your evening, and just note that parking has been validated, so you do not have to worry about that. If you are driving, drive home safe. Ladies and gentlemen, give yourselves a round of applause. Thank you.
The evening was very fun, was normal to me because I always attend to SANEF, almost SANEF event. Last week Thursday, we were having the first indigenous language media, seminar here in Central anyway. And the event is also here in Central. So to me, the evening was like fun, meeting the colleagues that we normally meet once, twice, in a year.
I'm a journalist and also a Nat Nakasa judge. Of course, it's a great privilege and honor to be a judge of this very prestigious South African award that really recognizes integrity, recognizes journalists telling a story under difficult circumstances, and we know telling the South African story is not always easy. It's challenging, it's difficult. It means that as a journalist you must have integrity in telling the story, and so this year's winners in particularly, I think, showed integrity, showed courage, showed that no matter what obstacles, they're going to tell a story. And that's what ultimately Nat Nakasa as a legacy left for us as journalists. He was courageous, he was brave, he told the story despite challenges, and I think we just want to honor his legacy, and in that spirit also give homage and honor to journalists that are doing that in very difficult and challenging circumstances.
I don't think people realize we've got some amazing publishers, small publishers, sitting in places like Bishu, all over the country. And they still continue to be the messengers in society. But I often wonder, how do they survive? It takes immense bravery to continue publishing. You've got so little sources of income. You've got so little support. You've got animosity. You've got just about everything against you. And still these publishers continue publishing.
This award is not for Dunsan, it's for community media as a whole. More especially the one that are broadcasting in indigenous language, that are publishing in indigenous languages. So this award is for us as a community media. Let's continue to do our good work that we're doing, even if we are facing difficult challenges. We know that COVID-19 have caused havoc in the mainstream media, and the community media is even worse. There's a lot of community media that have closed down. So this award, let's hang on there. The help is going to come very soon.
Daniel Stein, I'm a journalist with Ground Up News.
Thank you so much. Tell us, why is everyone talking about Daniel?
I don't know if people are talking about Daniel, but they're definitely talking about Thabo Bester, which is a guy who escaped from prison last year in May. He's a convicted rapist and murderer, and for quite a few months it seemed that he had died in his cell in prison. He had started a fire and burned to death. But we were given a tip-off at Ground Up that there are rumors that Thabo did not die, but he escaped. And we started then asking questions, and we realized the investigations by police and Department of Correctional Services are taking long. And then over the next few months, we uncovered more and more evidence.
Last year in October, my editor, Nathan Geffen, pulled me aside and told me that he had the story that he wanted me to look into. And he told me that Justice Edwin Cameron had notified him that investigations into Thabo Bester's death were stalling. It was taking very long to reach any form of finality, and Nathan wanted me to follow up on where things were standing with this investigation into his death. And the more I started looking into it, the circumstances surrounding it was somewhat suspicious. We also got hold of a prison visit report which contained findings of the post-mortem that was performed on the body found in the cell, and I think that was where the story took a different turn, because it said that the body or the person was dead before the fire had broken out. So now the investigation was a homicide. So then already things were not what they seemed.
Do the obituaries. That's so much part of our community. And this is where I'm very proud of the acknowledgement, but I think it should also go to so many of these small publishers throughout the country that do their best week after week, month after month, to keep on publishing, to keep on reporting.
I didn't expect anything that, I'm going to receive this award. But above all, this award is everybody in the community media, whether you are in Umlazi, you are in Bushbuckridge, Venda, wherever that we are. This award is for you, that, community media. The recognition, as I say, is not for me per se. as a recognition as a community media at large, across the country.
To have such a formidable speaker in the form of the judge, reminding us of South Africa's constitution and also our role as journalists. Of course, I think SANEF, in terms of the role that they're playing in South African media, but I think tonight is also a celebration of journalism, a celebration of storytelling, and for the journalism fraternity to come together and pay homage to, one of our stalwarts.
We're one of the oldest independent community newspapers in the country, and maybe I can sort of shift it and say, there's the old saying that I don't do journalism for money. I need to make money to do journalism, and that's a challenge. And today's set up for us as well, to keep on existing, to keep on doing quality journalism, and we are very proud of the type of journalism that we do. We've been lucky. A month ago in Cape Town, we won several awards at the Forum for Community Journalists. And these awards go to journalists that function in places like Thohoyandou, in Njilele, in Elim. These people in the most difficult of circumstances produce wonderful quality journalism. That we are very proud of.
I am incredibly humbled by the opportunity to be a recipient of this award, along with my colleague Daniel Steyn, who's been my partner in crime throughout this investigation. Ground Up has already won one of these for Raymond Joseph's work on the National Lotteries Commission. So I think for me and Daniel to also become a part of that legacy is just, it's a very humbling experience for us.
You get recognition, and it's nice to say that, all those years, because to bring out newspapers every single week, very few people know how hard that is. And then it is a humbling experience to sort of get that recognition, say, well, someone else is actually sort of appreciate what you're doing. Because you very seldom get appreciation from your own community. And I think it's in all other industries as well.
We would want more sponsors. I don't think we have enough sponsors that are sponsoring journalism and journalism events. We know there's always a fine line in terms of who pays and who sings for the payment, but I think it is about showing commitment. The media is doing so much in telling the untold story, so I think we could do with more sponsors in South African media.
You need to have that perseverance when you get into this field, because sometimes you're going to follow up with sources, people are going to be incredibly rude to you, and you need to learn to not take that personally. You need to focus on the story, you need to focus on being impartial, not showing any form of favoritism, and focusing on the facts, because at Ground Up we value high value and ethical journalism, and that is also what we portray throughout this best investigation. So I think for someone coming straight out of school, you need the perseverance, but also just that toughness, I guess, to be able to withstand some of the harsh criticisms that you'll receive, but also knowing that people are going to be very mean to you. And I think as a woman in this industry, it's a little bit harder for us. So if you are also a woman entering as a journalist into the space, you need to also just be aware that your experience might be different to your male counterparts.
For me, our communities, in the language that they understand, that's our role, that's our task. But for sure, once I strongly believe once they recognize the work that we are doing in the community media, they're definitely going to put more resources in community media to make sure that we sustain ourselves, we make sure that we keep informing our community again and again.
I think it's an honor, because although journalism is a dog-eat-dog world, I think that there really is the sense of community amongst journalists, and that really came through for us tonight, where this was a story that we broke and eventually mainstream media also hopped onto it. But our colleagues and peers in the media industry were still able to say these two Ground Up journalists deserve to be put on a pedestal and honored for their hard work. So we are incredibly grateful for this award. It was an amazing experience. I mean, just being here in Johannesburg amongst so many well-known, hardworking and revered journalists is an honor, because we're based in Cape Town. So just coming here was an experience of its own. So I'm incredibly honored just to be here.